I want to start today by planting a very specific scene in your head. I think every single person listening has been here. You're in a meeting, maybe a high-stakes one, or you're at a dinner party with people you want to impress. You see an opening, you crack a joke, and just crickets.
Oh, the silence, the absolute worst sound in the world.
It is physical pain.
Right.
But the real action, it doesn't happen in the room. It happens, maybe 20 minutes later. You're driving home or you're brushing your teeth and the commentary track starts. It says, "Why did you say that? You're so awkward. Everyone thinks you're weird. You should just never speak again."
The Midnight Tribunal is in session.
Exactly. We have this narrator, and for the longest time, I just treated that voice like, I don't know, bad weather.
Yeah.
Just a mood passing through, something sort of ephemeral.
Right, just a cloud floating by.
But the research we are diving into today completely flips that on its head. We're looking at a stack of sources centered on the neuroscience of self-talk. And the headline is pretty uncompromising. That voice isn't just psychological fluff.
No, it's not.
It is a biological mechanism.
Right.
It is physically sculpting the hardware of your brain.
And that is the core takeaway. We aren't talking about manifesting or just, thinking happy thoughts to put good vibes into the universe. We're looking at the biological mechanics of how silent words you never even speak out loud, change the physical structure of your neural pathways.
And that is our mission for this deep dive. We want to move past the believe in yourself bumper stickers and look at the machinery under the hood. How does it work? Why does the brain do this? And the big question, if we've wired our brains to be mean to ourselves, can we actually rewire them?
You can, but I do want to put a guardrail up right at the start here. Because when people hear rewire your brain, they think it sounds like magic, or they think it's an overnight fix.
Right, just think positive for 3 days and your life is perfect.
Takes 3 days, costs $99, act now, that kind of thing.
Exactly.
We need to be clear, this is strictly biology. It's about neural activation patterns. It is effective, but it is mechanical. It's not magic, and it's definitely not instant.
Well, let's pop the hood then. Let's look at the mechanics. Because I think most of us imagine this internal voice as this, ghostly, abstract thing floating around in our consciousness. But the research points to a very specific physical address, doesn't it?
It's surprisingly concrete, and honestly, this was a huge aha moment for researchers, too. When they started putting people in fMRI scanners and told them to talk to themselves silently, they expected to see, internal thought areas light up.
Something abstract.
Yeah, abstract processing. But that's not what happened. The scans showed that self-talk activates Broca's area.
Which is what exactly, for those of us who skipped anatomy class?
Broca's area is the language production center of the brain. It is the exact same part of your brain that fires when you are speaking out loud to a friend.
Wait, hold on. So biologically speaking, my brain doesn't really distinguish between me thinking I'm an idiot and me walking up to someone and saying I'm an idiot.
In terms of that initial activation, they are remarkably similar. Your brain processes that internal voice as speech.
Mhm.
It's a real, tangible input. It's not just a vague feeling, it's a linguistic command. And it doesn't stop there. It triggers a whole network. It lights up the prefrontal cortex.
The CEO of the brain.
The CEO, exactly. The part for logic and planning. And the anterior cingulate cortex, which handles emotional regulation.
Okay, so the CEO is listening. The message is being broadcast. But here is where it gets messy for anyone who has a harsh inner critic. What happens in that machinery when the voice is nasty? When we get stuck in that loop of, I can't believe I messed that up, I'm such a failure.
This is where we see the physiological cost. When that narrative is persistently negative, self-criticism, catastrophizing, you aren't just feeling sad. You are triggering threat-related neural circuits.
Threat-related, like there's a tiger in the bushes threat.
To your amygdala, yes. The amygdala is the brain's feel center. It's the alarm system. It is incredibly fast, but it's not very smart. It's not great at nuance. It hears disaster or unsafe from that internal voice, and it responds the only way it knows how. It dumps stress hormones like cortisol into your system. It puts the body on high alert.
So I'm sitting safely at my desk, worrying about a typo in an email, but my body is chemically preparing for a fistfight.
Precisely. Your heart rate goes up, your palms sweat, your vision narrows, and here is the kicker, the part that really affects your day-to-day performance. When the amygdala gets loud, it effectively shouts down the prefrontal cortex.
The CEO gets muted.
It's a resource allocation thing. If the brain thinks there's a physical threat, it doesn't want you pondering philosophy. It wants you to survive. So it dampens the activity in the logic and regulation centers.
That explains so much. That explains why, when you are deep in a spiral of self-doubt or anxiety, you literally cannot think your way out of it. You've taken the logic center offline.
You have. You enter this loop where you feel worse, so you can't think clearly to solve the problem, which makes you criticize yourself more. Why can't I figure this out? Which triggers the amygdala again. It's a self-sustaining cycle.
So let's flip the switch. What happens when the voice is supportive? And I want to be clear, I don't mean delusional, I'm the best person ever, but just constructive.
Crucial distinction. Constructive or compassionate self-talk doesn't just feel nice. It re-engages those prefrontal control networks. It effectively puts the CEO back in charge of the room.
So it's about control.
It's about regulation. The source material makes a really important point here that I think gets missed in pop culture. Positive self-talk doesn't eliminate negative emotions. If you screw up a project, you're still going to feel frustration or regret.
You don't turn into a robot who smiles at disaster.
Right. But constructive self-talk modulates how the brain processes that emotion. It stops the amygdala hijacking. It helps you metabolize that stress and recover faster.
I like that word, modulate. It's like the difference between a car with no suspension hitting a pothole, where it rattles your teeth out,
Oh, yeah.
versus a car with really good shocks. You still hit the bump, but you stay on the road.
That's a perfect analogy. And the reason you can build those shock absorbers, and this is the core of the science here, brings us to probably the most famous phrase in all of neuroscience.
Neurons that fire together wire together.
It's a classic for a reason.
But let's unpack it, because I feel like people say it at cocktail parties to sound smart, but the actual implication is kind of terrifying if you think about it.
It is intense. It describes the mechanism of neuroplasticity. The brain is plastic, it's moldable, it reorganizes itself based on experience, but crucially based on repetition. Every time you have a thought, a specific pattern of neurons fires.
Like a trace in the sand.
Exactly. If you have that thought once, it's a faint trail. The wind blows it away. But if you have that thought every day, I'm not good at this, I always mess up, you are treading that path over and over. You are physically strengthening the synaptic connections between those neurons. You are myelinating them. Myelin is like insulation on an electrical wire. The more you use a neural circuit, the more myelin the brain wraps around it.
Right.
And insulated wires transmit signals much, much faster.
I always picture this like a hiking path in the woods. If you walk the same path every single day, the grass dies, the dirt gets packed down, and eventually it becomes the easiest way to walk. You don't even have to decide to go that way. Your feet just go.
That's the path of least resistance. The brain is an energy saver. It's lazy in a smart way. It wants to use the most efficient pathway. So if you have spent 10 years criticizing yourself, your brain has built a superhighway for those thoughts. It's an autobahn of negativity.
Which is why it feels so automatic. You drop your keys and boom, idiot. It's instantaneous because that highway is paved and insulated.
Yeah.
Which sounds honestly kind of hopeless. If I've spent 30 years building a highway to I'm not good enough, am I stuck with that infrastructure?
It can feel that way, but remember the plasticity part. It works both ways. The research on cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT, shows that we can deliberately build new paths.
We can let the old highway grow over with weeds.
Yes, but, and this is the part people don't like to hear, it is exactly like bushwhacking a new trail in a dense forest.
It's hard work.
It's exhausting. The first time you try to speak kindly to yourself after a mistake, it feels unnatural. It feels fake. Your brain is saying, why are we walking through these thorns? There's a perfectly good highway right over there called self-loathing.
We could be hating ourselves so efficiently right now. Why are we doing this?
Exactly. But if you persist, if you force those mental reps, eventually the new path gets packed down, the grass dies, and the old highway, if you stop using it, eventually starts to crack and fade. But it requires consistency. You don't go to the gym once and get stronger.
It's a practice, not a pill. Now, speaking of seeing these changes, I want to bring up the visual side of this. The source material references Daniel Amen's work, specifically the most important lesson from 83,000 brain scans.
Yeah.
It suggests we can actually see the impact of this negative thinking on a scan.
Right.
Now, I know there's some controversy there. If I walked into a clinic today, could a doctor really look at a picture of my brain and say, wow, this guy really beats himself up about his emails?
We need to apply a little bit of scientific nuance here. Daniel Amen has done a lot to popularize the idea of looking at brain function, but within the strict academic community, there is some debate. There's debate about using his specific type of scans, called SPECT scans, for specific psychiatric diagnoses. It's not quite as simple as this dark spot means you have low self-esteem.
Okay, so we shouldn't diagnose our friends based on a single picture.
Exactly. We need to be careful not to oversimplify or overpromise on the technology. However, If we zoom out to the broad scientific consensus, what almost all neuroscientists agree on, the core principle holds up. Mental habits are reflected in functional brain activity.
So the evidence is there, even if the specific tool is debated.
Yes. We know for a fact that chronic stress alters emotion regulation circuits. We see it in fMRI studies all the time. If you spend years in a state of high anxiety and negative self-talk, your brain activity looks different than someone who practices resilience. You might see overactivity in the amygdala or underactivity in the prefrontal cortex.
So it's not about seeing the thought, I forgot the milk, but seeing the stress patterns that the thought created over time.
Correct. The biological reality is that function changes structure. Whether you see it on a SPECT scan or an fMRI, the hardware is changing. The brain is adapting to the load you put on it.
Okay, so the biology is real. The wiring changes. But I want to play devil's advocate for the listener who is maybe driving to work right now, staring at traffic, thinking, okay, that's nice that I can rewire my brain to be happier, but I have real problems. I have deadlines. I have a mortgage. I have a boss who yells. Is this just about feeling good?
This is where we need to talk about the ripple effect, because I think self-help gets a bad rap as being soft. But the source material lists 4 key areas where this impacts performance, and they are hard metrics. This impacts your bottom line.
Let's break them down. What's the first one?
Resilience, and specifically something called stress appraisal. When you face a challenge, say a massive project gets dropped on your desk at 4 p.m., how does your brain label it? Does it label it as a catastrophe or a challenge?
And that labeling is the self-talk.
100%. If your internal monologue says, this is impossible, I'm going to fail, you get a massive cortisol spike. You enter that threat mode we talked about. If the monologue says, this is going to be tough, but I can handle it, the biological response is different. You actually recover faster physically. You don't burn out as quickly.
Which leads directly to the second point, which frankly blew my mind. Problem solving.
This is the one that convinces the skeptics. Studies show that adaptive self-talk enhances working memory efficiency.
Let's define that. Working memory is like the RAM in your computer, right? It's how much info you can hold in your head at once.
Exactly. It's the scratch pad for your brain. Now imagine you are in a high-stakes meeting. You need all that RAM to process the questions and formulate answers. But if you are sitting there thinking, oh God, I'm sweating, they think I'm stupid, I'm going to get fired, you are using up a huge chunk of your RAM on that commentary.
You're running a massive background program that's eating up all your processing power.
Yes, you are literally making yourself less intelligent in the moment. You are clogging the system. By practicing constructive self-talk, by calming that voice, you are decluttering that RAM. You free up cognitive bandwidth to actually solve the problem.
That is a massive insight. Being kind to yourself isn't soft. It's a performance hack. It makes you sharper.
It makes you more efficient. And then you have the long-term effects, general well-being, of course, lower anxiety, lower burnout, but also long-term health. Persistent negative talk is a known risk factor for depression. Conversely, adaptive talk is a protective factor. You are essentially building an immune system for your mental health.
It really is an investment. But I want to circle back to something we touched on earlier, the skepticism. Because when we talk about positive self-talk, I think some people hear delusion.
I am a billionaire. I am a supermodel. Everything is perfect.
Exactly. Standing in the mirror, lying to yourself. I love sitting in traffic. My boss is actually a visionary. Is that what we were talking about? Because that feels fake, and frankly, it feels annoying.
And it feels fake because it is fake. And your brain is smart. It knows when you're lying to it. Neuroscience does not support denial. In fact, that kind of toxic positivity can backfire because your brain detects the gap between reality and your words, which creates more stress.
So if I'm standing in the rain with a flat tire, telling myself this is the best day ever is actually hurting me.
Right, because your amygdala is looking at the flat tire saying, are you crazy? This is bad. Why are you lying? It creates cognitive dissonance.
So what is effective self-talk then? The source gives us a specific checklist to avoid the toxic positivity trap.
It lists 3 main criteria. First, it must be realistic. It's not about pretending the difficulty doesn't exist. It's about acknowledging it without the catastrophic spin.
So instead of this is a disaster, my life is over, it's this is a flat tire, it sucks, I'm going to be late, but I can call AAA?
Exactly. It grounds you in facts, not fears. Second, it needs to be supportive. It shouldn't be dismissive. You don't say, stop whining, get over it. That's just another form of attack. You say, this is really frustrating, but I've handled car trouble before. I can figure this out.
That feels so much more manageable. And the third one?
Process-focused. This is key for high achievers who are listening. Don't obsess over the outcome. I have to win. I have to be perfect.
Hmm.
Focus on the process. I'm going to do my best preparation, or I'm learning how to handle this situation.
That shift from outcome to process takes so much pressure off. It moves the goalpost to something you can actually control.
It does, and that's really the summary of this whole field. The goal isn't to silence the negative voice completely. That narrator is always going to be there to warn you about things. The goal is to change your habitual response to it.
You want to have a rebuttal ready, a
Oh,
realistic, supportive rebuttal.
You want flexibility. Instead of automatically spiraling down the I'm an idiot highway, you want to build that off-ramp that says, okay, I made a mistake. How do we fix it?
We've covered a lot of ground today. We've gone from the anatomy of Broca's area to the concept of the brain as a muscle that needs consistent training. We've debunked the idea that this is just thinking happy thoughts and seen that it's actually a tool for cognitive efficiency.
And the realization that we are participating in our own cognitive training every single day, whether we realize it or not.
That's the scary and the exciting part. The training is happening anyway. You're always building some kind of road.
That's the key takeaway for me. Your thought patterns are what we call active inputs. They are shaping neural structure. You are the architect of your own brain's wiring diagram.
That is such a powerful image. You aren't just living in your brain, you are building it.
Every day, brick by brick or neuron by neuron.
So here's the question we want to leave you with today. If your brain is physically recording your internal monologue every single day, if it's laying down track for the trains that will run tomorrow and next year, what kind of structure are you building for your future self to live in? Are you building a dungeon where everything is a threat and you're always under attack? Or are you building a command center where you have the tools to handle whatever comes up?
It's a choice. It's a hard choice that takes practice, but it is a choice.
Thanks for diving in with us.
Until next time.